Behind me now, a beautiful full moon is rising in the eastern sky. And this is a rather special full moon. It is the first full moon to occur after the spring equinox, which was last month in March. And that means that next Sunday, the first Sunday after this full moon, the first after the spring equinox, by definition, will be Easter Sunday. So this is the Easter full moon. Now the moon goes round the earth every 27 1/3 days. But its orbit around the earth is not a perfect circle. Sometimes the moon's a little bit closer and sometimes a little bit further away. The varying distance of the moon from the earth, centre of the earth to centre of the moon, varies between 222,000 miles when the moon is closest to the earth and 253,000 miles when the moon is furthest away. When the moon is closest to the earth, we say it's at perigee, and when it's furthest away, we say it's at apogee. Now, the phases of the moon repeat in a continuous cycle, but in a slightly different time frame. Because the moon is not only going round the earth, but the earth and moon together are going round the sun, the phases of the moon repeat in a slightly longer cycle, 29.5 days. So the interval between one full moon and the next is 29.5 days, and the orbital period of the moon round the earth is 27.3 days. Now the difference between those two time periods means that the different phases of the moon will occur at different distances of the moon from the earth during the year. The two cycles are out of step. Sometimes full moon will occur when the moon is near perigee, and sometimes the full moon will occur when the moon is near apogee, and there'll be many full moons which occur at some distance in between the two. Now it so happens that this particular full moon is occurring when the moon is near perigee. Actually, earlier on this evening, the moon was at perigee, and its distance was just near 222,000 miles from the Earth. Full moon will not be occurring until a bit later tonight. In fact, the early hours of tomorrow morning, just after 2:30 on the 8th of April. But even though there's an 8-hour discrepancy between the moon being at perigee and the actual time of full moon, we call this a supermoon. And this is a term that's become adopted in recent years to describe the moon, the full moon, that occurs when the moon is near perigee. And the reason for that is because when the moon is near perigee, it appears very slightly larger in the sky than it does when the full moon's at apogee. Now, you wouldn't notice the difference with the unaided human eye, but if you took a picture of the moon when it was at perigee and a picture of the moon when it was at apogee, and you compared the two, you would actually see the difference in apparent size as viewed from the Earth. So this is a supermoon, and it's the Easter full moon. But there's another name that you'll have heard bandied around in association with this particular full moon, and that is the pink moon. Now, as you can see, the moon isn't actually pink in colour. It's a beautiful pearly white as usual. The reason some people are calling it the pink moon is because of the native North Americans who named all of the full moons of the year. Now, in the United Kingdom and in Northern Europe, we only tend to have names for the September full moon, which is the harvest moon, and the October full moon, which is the hunter's moon. But the native North Americans had names for all the full moons in the year. And this particular full moon occurred at a time when there was a small flowering plant with a pink flower that blooms in early spring in the United States and Canada, hence the name the pink moon. Now when you look at the moon through binoculars or a small telescope, and when you look at full moon, of course it is blindingly bright. Not bright enough to damage your eyesight, but certainly uncomfortable to look at. But you'll notice when you look at the full moon at this time, through a binoculars or a telescope, that there are brighter areas and there are darker patches, most of which are round or thereabouts. The roughly circular dark patches are called mare or seas, although there's never been any water in them, it's just a name. The dark patches were originally giant impact basins, excavated by the very first massive impacts to hit the moon early in its history. They punctured through the crust of the moon and molten rock welled up in those giant impact basins and eventually solidified and darkened, producing the dark mare regions we see today. Now, as we look at the full moon, on the left side, there is the largest of these mare, the Oceanus Procellarum, the ocean of storms. And it's about 1,000 miles by about 480 miles in size. And then right at the top of the full moon, there is an almost circular mare region, the Mare Imbrium, the Sea of Showers, and that is just over 700 miles in diameter. And then to the right of the Mare Imbrium, we have the Sea of Serenity, the Mare Serenitatis, and below that, the Sea of Tranquility, Mare Tranquillitatis, made famous in July 1969 when Neil Armstrong and Buzz Aldrin touched down there in their landing module Eagle and became the first humans to walk on the moon. And in between the Mare Tranquillitatis and the limb or edge of the moon, there is a small region, the Mare Crisium, the Sea of Crises. The brighter areas are the highland regions, which are pockmarked by many craters of different sizes, evidence of the continual bombardment that's been going on for millions and millions of years. But you won't see those craters particularly well at full moon because the sun is shining directly on the moon and there's very little in the way of shadow to bring out the detail in those craters. But there's one type of crater that you will see really well when it's full moon, and those are ray craters. And towards the bottom of the full moon there is a very bright ray crater, and you can see the rays radiating out from the crater like spokes of a bicycle wheel, and that ray crater is called Tycho. Over to the left-hand side of the moon you may see a very bright spot of light. That is the brightest point on the moon, and that is the crater Aristarchus. And then midway between Aristarchus and the centre of the moon, we have another fairly large ray crater, not as prominent as Tycho, but certainly very obvious, and that is the crater Copernicus. So there's lots to see and enjoy on the full moon. So go out and have a look at the moon and enjoy the supermoon, the Easter full moon, the pink moon, whatever you like to call it.